Okay, guys, we have our guest, Matt. He's about to join us, so just bear with us as we tap into this unique conversation, guys. Hey, what's going on, Matt? How you doing?
You're great, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. First off, thank you for joining us here on our platform. We're very grateful to have you. Given the current state and times in this world, so I just want to take the time out to send my gratitude to you, man. Thank you for being here with us on our platform.
Yeah, man. And the gratitude's reciprocated. This is a time where I kind of think that nobody in the world wants to hear from a guy like me right now. So to be able to share this space with you, it feels really good. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And, just to kind of go off what you said, I think that's the general perception, but it's, at the end of the day, like I said, it's, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe in the divine power of the universe, man. And that's why we're here,
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take some time to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience, people that don't know who you are. Just kind of tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then we'll get into our discussion.
For sure. Well, I'll keep it super quick. So my name is Matt, and I'm a Toronto-based photographer and director. And we actually met on a photo shoot for, I think it was the Raptors a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
And
Yes,
thankfully we stayed in touch since then
absolutely.
and really grown with each other as entrepreneurs and artists and community members.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So yeah, it's amazing to see, like I said, your growth over the years, and the things that you've been able to indulge in your career has been, very inspirational for myself. And I know, there was a time where we were both doing our thing, and I didn't see you for 2 years, but it felt like time has, didn't we didn't miss a beat when we got back together. So it was
oh, hell no, man.
yeah, man, that's dope, man. But yeah. So obviously, you've been seeing a lot of the things that are kind of going on in the world, and the current state of America. What do you think about the justice reform protests and the thoughts on the riots? Like, just kind of talk to, I guess, what you've seen, and what do you think about your thoughts about the riots?
My thoughts are is that everything going on feels like a bit of a necessary event. Um, from my obvious white gaze on this whole thing is that there's two ways that it can go, and one of them is that um, this movement is suppressed, and then we find ourselves here again in a year, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, or this boils over and really receives the traction and the revolution that it deserves, long overdue. Um, so it hurts my heart to see people hurt and suffering. Those are two things that I innately just don't want for anybody.
Yes.
But I have a lot of respect for people that are out there, um, literally putting their life on the line. We're witnessing a civil war and a revolution, and I just hope everybody's okay.
Yeah,
That's all I
it's
want for everybody.
Yeah, it's tough, growing up, especially in the inner city, you know what I mean? You don't really know about, not to say you don't know about racism, but, you grow up, you have friends that are white and friends that are black and that come from different environments. And, you just try to love everybody regardless of, the things that make you guys indifferent. So it's tough that now growing up and seeing different experiences that, not only that I had to face with racism, but, for it being prevalent in today's time. And, you see that now because of the way people's ignorance, have these preconceived notions on African American men, or, just the race for this matter. It can kind of escalate to people that are, getting killed at the expense of police brutality and, you know, social justice and justice reform and things of that matter. So, it's very disturbing, as obviously an African American male, but also as a citizen, of North America, and having family that's, in America, and a lot of my best friends that are in these cities that are facing tragic times. So, You know,
Right.
like you said, it's, prayers is things that I rely on, and, just people that I'm around that are going to continue to inspire me to use my platform, to use my voice to do good for the community. And I'm actually really invested in, setting up a platform with, if it's members of the communities, or just, like I said, more doing the action part, because I think
Hmm.
that given, the unique time, it's, it gives me a time to, strategize on different ways that I can help enrich, the inner city communities through, like, if it's sports or education or, funding and things of that matter. So, yeah, it's tough, man, and I kind of hear you and I feel you 100%. So, it's obviously something we're going to have to deal with. And I just hope that people don't turn a blind eye and, you know, and move on deaf ears, because 3 months later, I hope everybody's really still preaching the things that we're preaching now. And
Right.
we've seen through history and through time that Black Lives Matter is just, a storyline, and 3 months later you might forget about George Floyd. That's just the harsh reality. So why is it that we can't continue to, push the legacy forward and help people that come from similar communities like that, especially for African American males? If this is things that are continuing to happen, things need to be addressed, like, and things need to be passed, whether it's bills and segregation laws, or, even for the policing. I think they have to definitely reevaluate police systems, because what tests
Big
are they
time.
taking? Are police taking psychological tests, vulnerability sector tests? Like, are they taking a lot of things that allow them to be fully equipped cops that are going to protect and serve the community?
Hmm.
So these are just things that I kind of think about. And I'm very, like I said, it's a very touchy subject for me, because I always tell myself I wish I could do more, and
Yeah.
unfortunately I'm just one person. So
Well, thanks for sharing, man. And it's great that you mentioned that being just one person. I'd be interested to hear what your perspective is on, um, let's say, anybody who's non-black, or any like white people who are posting on social media and reposting and using that as a communication tool. Like, I remember a few years ago that would have been kind of dismissed as something called slacktivism.
mm,
um, and nowadays it's not. It's actually can make big shifts, and it can mean that one more signature on a petition. It can mean that $20 more into a bailout fund. Like, what's your take on kind of that using social media as a platform to do that?
well, I have two parts to that. That was an amazing question, by the way, and thanks for asking me that. But there's kind of two parts to my my perspective. So I'm gonna just give you a little bit of a rundown. So there was an American educator by the name of Jane Elliott. She was actually a white Caucasian educator from Iowa, and
Mhm.
she taught a third grade class, and she had this exercise that was named the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. So basically,
Yeah.
she would separate groups according to eye color, and place these groups and treat them differently based on their eye color. And what she was teaching is how people in those positions treat the minority groups and members in our society. And she was white, but what she taught people that were white is that she was teaching discrimination, and how, if you're a white person, how can you kind of speak up on that, or be more educated to know that, racism doesn't come from a place of being innate and born. It's taught to you. And
Hmm.
a lot of educators are teaching things that they've been taught. And the fact that the system in education doesn't really talk about a lot of Afrocentric history, it's pretty hard, for a lot of people to learn these things, and they got to teach themselves. And we talk about the whole history lesson of, you know um, Christopher Columbus, and people always say he discovered America, but how can he discover a place that people were there before him?
That already exists. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the first in civilization, the first people that were on, the earth looked like me, like they were African American descent. You know what I mean? So it's just like I said, education is a very big point, and a lot of people may not have all the answers, but you can't be scared to ask those questions and read those books and look at these documentaries, because you can learn the littlest thing that much make the big difference. But when you're silent and you don't want to talk up, then, you know, I personally feel that you're just as part of the problem as the police. You get what I'm saying? So that's just kind of how I feel. And I'm been seeing a lot of people taking the initiative to educate themselves. So, you know, like I said before, it's all of you know, it's all about the perspective and how you can continue to educate yourself. I think education gives you the first point of, you know, point of defense, and you can kind of strategize how to put plans in place based on what you know or what you are learning. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my whole take. Sorry, I went off on a tangent, but yeah,
No, it's all good, man. I loved it.
yeah.
I think the question was your thoughts on like people who are non-black that are posting and reposting on social media as a means to communicate, and kind of what, like, yeah, what you thought about that.
Yeah, so I think you know, it's a good tool, and it like I said, everybody I think is using social media at this time to stay connected, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and like I said, a lot of people like to follow trends, but if you see real intention, you know, behind what you're posting, and you know, you're actually trying to help spread awareness, like, I'm all for that, you know. And I think for the most part, I think a lot of people are very genuine and compassionate to what's going on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that, you know, people continue to encourage people to use their social media platforms for the greater good of these causes, and to speak up. And I received a couple, like, tags about email generator of, you know, writing an email to the Minneapolis Police Department about, hey, like, I'm from the residents of this state, and I'm speaking on the death of George Floyd. And I
Mm-hmm.
think all cops should be, you know, charged with first or second or third degree murder. So it is definitely influencing a lot of people to put things in place, and it gives black people like us, you know, more motivation and more courage to, you know, be forthcoming and do push the envelope a little bit for, you know, a lot of the plans and strategies that we have in place.
Mm-hmm. And I feel as a white man, it's given me so much access to information.
Absolutely.
That's what's really uncovered during this whole thing. It's polarized how important information is and how important communication is, and those real talks. I think the process of kind of deconstructing one's own indoctrinated white supremacy comes along with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of weird, uncomfortable feelings,
Yeah.
because it's literally deconstructing the DNA, you know, of years and years of this weird system that was, you know, constructed to work for us and against others. And so to be able to share it and then have people message you saying thank you, or you know, sharing it again, and knowing that that's kind of rippling along, from my perspective, has been really important.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, you know, I was going to actually turn to the next question of your upbringing. So, you know, I obviously met you, you know, a couple of years ago, but just talk about the influence of your, you know, your upbringing, and how that kind of, you know, shaped your perspective, you know, for that matter, on a lot of, you know, the oppression things that you see now. Like, you know, I guess you could talk about experiencing, you know, your childhood, and then I guess what your first thought or reaction is when you see, you know, oppression or racism, systemic racism, and like
Mm-hmm.
what that kind of felt like to you.
Yeah, and that's been something I've been reflecting a lot. It's a really good question. I grew up in Georgetown, which is about 45 minutes northwest of here. And beside Georgetown is a town called Acton, which was kind of ground zero for the KKK in Ontario. It was so close to home, in fact, that my secretary was the mom of the Grand Dragon, and she had changed her last name, and so it was that close, you know. And when I was two, my mom and I were at the bank on Main Street, which is kind of like a little main drag in a small town. And the KKK stormed Main Street in full, costume. Um, and they assaulted a black woman, and her husband had punched one of the members, and he ended up going to jail for assault.
Wow.
And that was my first exposure to hate. We were down the street at the time. Obviously, people were running and trying to get away because things were kind of escalating. Um, and I don't remember the event specifically. When I saw the newspaper clipping online, when I researched it, it kind of brought it back. But that was my first exposure to it. But for me, I grew up in a household that was very loving and accepting and happy. Um, and I would say go as far as to say non-racist. My immediate family. But I also grew up in a family that didn't really talk about politics, race, money, things like that as well too. So it kind of stopped at being not racist, which I kind of thought was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed there until I was 18 or 19 years old, and then I moved to the city. And even before that, I had the opportunity to travel, in high school and in my younger years, and be exposed to everybody. So I wasn't there yet, but I was primed for, an attitude and an outlook of not being afraid of something that was different than me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, but I think probably the biggest shift for me was about probably a year ago when someone told me about how to be an anti-racist. And when I read that book, I realized that I don't know shit, and there's so much work to do,
Yeah,
which includes really observing and honoring those childhood memories and that upbringing, and applying that to every step forward. Thank you
absolutely.
for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're doing an amazing job, and you've been one that's always been very insightful and that loves to learn, and you're very open minded, and I think that's one of the things that I like about you, right? Like you giving me that book, Understanding Poverty, and
Oh yeah,
just
that
learning
was heavy.
exactly, just learning the
Yeah.
psychological or generational shifts of why people from poverty have a limited access to opportunities, and people that
Mm-hmm.
are impoverished or growing up in poverty are visible minorities, African American males, Hispanic people, and things of that nature. So I think now that we're shifting into a new type of time and a new regime of that matter, you see the cops now, and I always say the way the American system works in terms of federal is they always associate crime or like bad groups of ethnic with ethnic or visible minority groups. So black equals crime. So
Yep.
the way they operate is, okay, if we eliminate a mass audience of blacks, then it reduces the crime rate. It's a safer environment. So I think that's their mentality when they go into certain areas and neighborhoods, and
Mm-hmm.
the way they're trained is, okay, if we see a black or whatever, let's just illuminate the situation by eliminating them. That's one less person, one less crime,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I'm very, like I said, for as a black male, I'm speaking for solely myself. I think one thing that we could do better, as a black community is, why don't we try to re-educate ourselves and reinvent ourselves, and who cares what they think about us, but let's try to help each other. Let's build each other up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not kill each other. Don't tear each other down. Let's
Mm-hmm.
let's support each other's businesses. Let's open our own businesses. Let's have funds
Yes.
and resources for our communities, and help one another to the point where we're so powerful as an alliance that whatever we have will trump what they have over there,
Yep.
and police will start looking at in a different light. Crime rate's gonna go down, unemployment rate will go down, you know what I mean? A lot of more
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial success will be from black, or visible minority groups for that matter, so I think with those steps in place, you give yourself a greater opportunity, for you not to get taken advantage of from the police.
Hmm.
So I think I've always said it. It's obviously easier said than done. That's right, but let's just get out of our comfort zone. Let's
Yeah.
challenge one another. We're so quick to support, and I'm not looking down because everybody has their, everything is not for everybody. So some people value things that don't have a long-term return, or they don't see it through. And I said, instead of supporting something of negative or ill intent, let's get together for a good cause.
Hmm.
Let's open up community centers where the kids can kind of go to and play and have mentorships and you know after school tutoring and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And let's not spend our money on drugs or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think if we reinvent ourselves, we give ourselves the best possible opportunity to get out of that situation of being
Hmm.
at the expense of white cops and police brutality for that matter. So that's one of many ways, but I think that's the first thing that can make the biggest difference, other than
Right.
information and education. So
Yeah, and that's the thing is there seems to be such a suppression of information and education because the budgets just are allocated in such strange ways.
yeah, absolutely.
Like even looking at what the next police budget is going to be for Toronto, it's like
Hmm.
astronomical. Like
Yeah,
I don't understand why or how we got to a place where just throwing police at every situation has become the norm. Like specifically with the most recent case with the Regis family, there was no need for anybody with a pistol on their belt or a bulletproof vest to enter that situation. That
absolutely.
could have been a social worker. That could have been a lot of other trained professionals.
Uh-huh.
Um, Especially, I've heard a lot of, not a lot, but the criticism I have heard is like, oh, well, she was known to police. They'd been there before. Well, okay, great. So you're saying that they were armed with knowledge. There was a record of who she was.
Uh-huh.
And why were 8 police officers there? Because she had a
Absolutely,
knife?
absolutely.
So it's if we can just allocate the money from policing into education and community reform,
Uh-huh.
um, that just seems like such an obvious thing. It's
Yeah,
fucking bullshit that
yeah.
it's just such an uphill battle and it takes so much to get there.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. I don't know. I just think like if it's any time to start, and I always like just kind of refer to the people that are in these positions in terms of like athletes, artists, rappers. You know what I mean? I read an article today that says the average human being watches 11 hours of TV. And within that 11 hours, you got sports, you got the news, you got entertainment and music,
Mm-hmm.
you got movies. So all those figures that are in those industries have a lot of power of influence. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So to say that and to see that, they have the voice and the spending power and the backing, and they could do so much more. I think that would be a smart way to start because they have that advantage. You know what I mean? They have
Mm-hmm.
the things that I just mentioned. So even if they could start, minimal efforts by coming together and say, listen, you know, I've seen LeBron James do it, and with his I Promise School, and I commend him for that. I've seen Carmelo Anthony do it, in his hometown Baltimore. But we need more people like that, and a lot of people, like I say, they see the misfortune and the good deeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they fail to come together because if it doesn't benefit me, I don't want to do it. But that's such a scarcity mindset and not an abundant mindset. It's not going to help enrich our community going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have empathetic people that want to be genuine and help people, then it's going to be hard for these things to be in place. And these our government, like it's ran by people that are very realist. They're not optimistic about change and hopeful for things of that matter to happen. They're just very realistic. Okay, this is our system, this is how
Mm-hmm.
it's ever going to be. And I just don't believe in those things. I'm very optimistic that change can come. And I know that things have shown throughout the duration of time. But with that being said, I'm still hopeful for change, and I know that change is going to happen, but it's going to take a collective effort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Do you think that what's happening right now will bring positive change? Are you still hopeful, even though what's happening, that between the peaceful protesting? Because I just can't lump them all together. That just feels really wrong to me in
yeah,
my heart.
yeah,
It's we have the peaceful protesters, and we have rioting and looting, which are not the same thing at all, and they're not the same group of people. Um, but do you think that that ultimately is going to, bring amongst positive change?
well, and that's what I said earlier. I think the idea of rioting and protesting, no, rioting. So the one where they're like breaking into the stores and looting. Personally, I don't think that's gonna bring positive change.
Hmm.
But I'm so for protesting for a purpose,
Hmm.
and it's just so funny to me because everybody that's rioting and protesting aren't with us in terms of the message that they represent. A
Hmm.
lot of people don't have, they're not doing it for, a higher cause or a higher purpose. They're doing it to inflict ill intent and
Hmm.
hate,
Well,
which
it's because
this is not.
they're angry, and I
Exactly.
get it. Like, it's
You know,
valid.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
100% get it because I know how people's minds work. But at the end of the day, all that's going to do is make the situation worse because you're giving these people more reason to use these guns. Because you're going to hear about people in the protests getting killed now because, the police is like, okay, there's curfew, and then you're still outside protesting. So,
Hmm.
you're just, you know what I mean? So, it's hard to say because the rioting, I've seen a lot of stories about the immigrant family that came to the country and 30 years of hard work for their liquor store, and then there's
Yep.
kids that are going to break in and steal everything. And this is a person that's not racist. This is a visible minority that's for
Hmm.
you. They have a community store in your community where you
Yeah.
guys support it, and they built it for 30 years for their family to inherit it, and you're just going to take it away because of the way you feel when they probably feel the same way as you. You
Oh,
get what I'm
absolutely.
So that's when I look at the rioting, and it's like, wow, like I've heard some really crazy stories in New York City where they're breaking into stores that, the community was raised upon. And like, can you imagine like growing up in my neighborhood having a convenience store that I had a lot of, emotional ties to, and they just break it down because of
Yeah.
what's going on, So I don't think change is going to come, when you're doing things like out of ill intent and hate. But whenever something's coming from a genuine place, meaning you're standing for something because it's morally and socially the right thing to do, then you're in it for the higher power. And I feel like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Emmett Till, and those great Black African American leaders that came before us that are not here with us today, they stood for something that was bigger than themselves, and that's why their legacy will forever live on. And that's from the divine universe and the higher power seeing that good purpose. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because that's all it is at the end of the day is you want to stand for something that you believe in, but
Hmm.
because you feel it's right and it's going to advance our community and our human race in a positive manner forward. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah,
So,
man.
so that's just how I feel, and I understand. I'm very understanding. I understand when you've been oppressed for hundreds of years. That's everything coming out, and
Hmm.
anger and all that emotion and
It's
aggression.
generational. It's in your DNA.
Absolutely.
You're
So
fighting for everything, not just
yeah.
today.
So I do believe the frustration there, but I got to be real at the end of the day. Is that the greatest way to go about doing this? Probably not. But I do understand you. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
that's kind of where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's just tough, man. It's like every day, and that's what I'm saying. Like to have social media in your face every day and just seeing every day, but scrolling and seeing worse and worse and worse. It's overwhelming.
Hmm.
And I told my friend the other day, I wish, I can just shut off Instagram, but there's still the news and there's still articles and there's still the
Yep.
internet, and you just can't escape it. So it's tough. It's very tough.
But what's your thoughts on Kaepernick? Since we got to talk a little bit about sports.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure.
what's your thoughts on Kaepernick? Do you think that his purpose and his legacy is bigger than football?
Oh,
Because that seems to be what is illuminating for me. I'm going, if this guy never makes it back in the NFL, that might be the greatest gift to him because this man has a purpose that is way bigger than running and catching a ball. Like,
absolutely, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to just say, I'm very thankful to have lived through something like that, where I could see an athlete like
mhm.
Kaepernick stand for something of, you know, so divine to our culture as an African American male and as an athlete, and we look at Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a lot of guys that came before Cap, but that was one of the most impactful moves that I've seen in the world of sports in my
So elegant too.
you know what I mean? In my
Yeah.
27 years of living, there's Michael Jordan. There's so much great athletes that came before him, but that stood for something and that sacrificed his life in terms of what he worked so hard for everybody else. So I stand 100% behind him, and it is kind of bad that he was used it as a scapegoat. A lot of people had negative things to say about him. Oh, he's doing it wrong. He's he wants this. He wants the money. When Nike did the campaign, everybody's like, oh, like, he did it for that. But the basis or the premise of his social act was to raise awareness and
Mhm.
to tell the people in the NFL, hey man, like if this is what I believe in, if you're gonna crucify me and use me as a sacrilege lamb, then be all for it. But I know that 50 years from now, when there's a kid that reads about Colin Kaepernick, it's gonna give them that whoa, this
Yeah.
is powerful, and you see guys like Jay-Z and Rock Nation, and they powering up with the NFL for social justice, media coverage and entertainment during the Super Bowl is all adding the pieces to the puzzle with the people with the right power, the right backing, and everything comes together. And then they started the Reform Alliance, which is their mission is to decrease the mass incarceration rates in the U.S. justice system, and prison reform. So they got like Michael Rubin, Van Jones, Clarisai, Robert Kraft. They have a lot of founding members that are trying to, change the outdated laws and legislations that entrap people of color into the prison system. Because in America,
Mhm.
when you get arrested and you're on probation, you're in the system, and they throw you in jail when you don't have money for bail. Your trial date can be 2-3 years,
Yep.
and before you even see a judge, because your family doesn't have money, so they're trying to change laws and stuff like that. So if it wasn't for guys like Kaepernick, who says if things like the reform and stuff like that can kind of come into existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I said, as sports has took a home,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, bring the NBA back. But I'm what I've learned throughout my career as an athlete and now transcending and doing different things is you always got to have a bigger purpose. And I knew that when I used to play basketball, that wasn't the only thing I was put on this world to do. I knew I always had a deeper divine purpose, and I always used to say, like, man, if when my legacy is done, I don't want the guy to be, oh, he was a great basketball player.
Yeah.
I
You don't
want
want
it
it to just be stats.
exactly. It's like, oh, man, this guy really, he did something, man. He was a legend, man. Like a lot of the kids in the community look up to him. He helped people, he was there. He cared. He made a difference. That's he changed the world. Like that's what I want to be remembered by, and I think that's what drives me to be engaged in different things and have a passion about changing things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on Kaepernick, man. I'm standing beside his Know Your Rights campaign, and I honestly think whenever the time is right, if I can ever, meet Cap and get down, I'm 100% in for the cause.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you can push for that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I was gonna ask you, this is a little debate or kind of just picking a side. If you think racism is something that you're taught, or are you born being racist?
Hmm. I I think right off the bat, I'd like to say that it's a little bit of both.
Mm,
I think it's, and even take it even further, it's something that's fostered as well too, and cared for because it is so meaningful and so safe to so many bad people. There are so many people that racism is really working for, and people that are benefiting from racism, benefiting from white supremacy. Um, so I think that there is a part of it because, as we both know, that trauma, generational trauma, is in your body. It's stored in your DNA. I mean, things that it could be argued that things that happened to your great great grandmother are things that you could experience PTSD from.
mhm.
Um, so I think that there's an element of that. It's there's a lineage of racism that takes place, but then there's also just having parents and an immediate community around you uh, that fosters that racism and develops that racism. Um, and it's so yeah, I think it's a combination of both plus fostering.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I'm definitely I agree with a lot of the things that you said. I think for the most part, it's just taught. It has a lot to do with your environment, your influence, who you're around. You know what I mean, and how open your mind is. I think when you're racist, it's because the way you've been treated, or
Mm-hmm.
the people that you've been around have been treated. Because like I always say, I had all my best friends growing up when I was like little, and like middle school, and they're white, and some of the greatest people that I still, connect with are white, and I was never a racist by any means because I never looked at color. I looked at the way you treated me and
Mm-hmm.
from inside, So I think it's being taught. It's the ignorance of people. It comes from the divine power of like how you feel about yourself. I think the way you view somebody else is representation of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people are very insecure, and they don't really have self-confidence and good self-esteem, so they build up that anger and that ignorance, and they try to inflict the way they feel about themselves to another race. So that's kind of how my take on racism, because I don't think you can be born, you know, hating a certain race, but if you were born in, a Caucasian environment and that's all
Mm-hmm.
you're around, those people you're around have racist tendencies and they're indirectly racist, and systemic racism occurs, then you're gonna basically probably follow that cycle, or
Mm-hmm.
that trend of that matter. So I think, like I said, there's two sides, but I think it's more taught than it is an
Mm-hmm.
innate and inborn variable.
Yeah. Well, it's so easy to participate in because it's so negative and it's so hateful.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I mean, as I think we've talked about this before, just how negativity is one of the easiest spirals to kind of fall victim to because you just kind of stop giving a shit and just kind of just spew shit everywhere. And
Yeah.
racism is part of that. So I think it's a really horrible way of life that's really easy for angry people.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that a lot of white people from, especially from smaller towns, can relate to Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, whatever, name the occasion where it's like, there's an eye roll and a bit of, oh, I got to prepare myself because of Uncle Kevin,
Uh-huh.
and whatever crazy shit he's going to say this year.
Hmm.
It's just such easy catchphrases. Like, Trump uses them all the time. Lock her up,
Yes, absolutely.
whatever it is. But with, crazy Uncle Kevin, it's, they're taking our jobs, or whatever it is, that whatever that fear that they have, that they might lose equity, they might lose status.
Yeah,
They're coming over here. Where are they? What does that even mean? They're coming over here.
yeah,
What
yeah,
job are they taking of yours? So it's just so easy to repeat. So I agree with you that it is, a heavy portion of it is taught, and
uh
it is really easy to teach because it's so emotional and it's so negative.
yeah, absolutely. And like negativity usually sells. It's the bigger the story, the bigger the check. And media, right? We
Yeah,
see in movies. I'm actually wearing this shirt, Boys in the Hood, the classic by John Singleton. But like
yeah, man.
that was like, there's always like those morals in those type of movies, and like Do the Right Thing and stuff, where it's like it's in your face, like racism's in your face, you're seeing it, and a lot of people identify with it because you might be that kid in South Central LA that it's like, damn, these cops are racist against their own kind,
Yeah,
and you don't really see that, but that's just the reality. And as filmmakers, they depict these images that, like I said, release a morale, or what's the general synopsis of the movie, but it's usually a reality. You know what I mean? So the media definitely does play a role in it as well. And when you have people, like Donald J. Trump in the office, and he's doing a lot of, the mockery things, and calling out, people out of their names, and being very prejudiced to all visible minorities and things like that, it does give other people the, oh wow, if Trump is doing it, it's okay. He's the president.
yeah. He's the
He's
example.
exactly. So it's like, oh, I might as well say it too. And you build up your group and your campaign with people that are going to support those type of things, and you're teaching racism. You get what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
And then people are identifying it even further.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I
So
think we've had great conversations about external identifiers and like what
mhm.
happens when you take that away. And for some people, identifying as a racist, it brings them comfort, which is really backwards and psychologically dangerous. Like, there's people that probably really look forward to being around their like-minded people. It just so happens those like-minded people are full of hate and anger and fear,
Absolutely.
but they're so afraid of being alone or lonely. Like, I don't know. Now I'm just riffing about how somebody could possibly live a sustainable life as a racist,
That's what
because
I'm
it must be
saying.
exhausting to be that hateful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's just the core of, like we always talk about, like, if you don't know who you are and you're very confused as a person, chances are you're living life in, uncertainty, hate,
Mm-hmm.
discomfort, um, agitated, apprehensive. There's so much words that I can kind of use to describe somebody that's living, not knowing who they are, and not having the knowledge of self. So it's
Yeah.
when you, I guess, look yourself in the mirror, and you know who you are, and why you're that way. I think you have nothing but the best to give to others, and that's filled with love, being genuine, positive energy, and things of that matter. So, I think a lot of people that are confused, and that wear a lot of masks and hide themselves, and they can't look themselves in the mirror. Guys like Trump,
Mm-hmm.
guys that, don't feel comfortable or confident within themselves, and,
Well, they put
have
on that hat and
ex-
transform, right?
exactly, exactly. So, and they need their status, or to stand on a podium with, 100 people beside them, to make them feel empowered, and to create a false narrative that isn't them. So yeah, it's really unfortunate, but like I said, I'm always hopeful for greater days, and I just try to, like, spread awareness with the people that have similar values as myself, and I know that when I do my community engagement events and my social impact projects, and things of that nature, I know, like, who I could rely on, who I can depend on, who I will be, down to support, and I don't waste my time going to people that probably don't, understand the value of supporting, inner city communities and enriching, the youth through sport and things of that matter or that nature.
Mhm.
So, that's my whole, next thing is just focusing my energy on those that share those similar values and that's into do great things for the community because it's the moral and social thing to do,
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. But with everything going on, how are you finding ways to kind of just decompress and chill out and maybe unpack everything? Like, do you meditate or do you journal or like,
I'll be very honest with you. I've been, hanging around a lot of people that just make me feel, very relaxed.
Mhm.
My mom is one of them, just hanging around with my mom sometimes and, just talking about, like old times and, reminiscing about, childhood and stuff kind of makes me, feel emotional, but it releases the good emotional neurons, and I feel a certain
Yeah,
type of way. And spending time with my friends that haven't seen or talked to in a long time, and we kind of check in and have that mental check in and make sure everything's going well. And I think one of the things that I've turned to was music. I think
hmm,
socially conscious music is things that I've been listening to for the messages, and just kind of listening to like Nas or J. Cole or Meek Mill now that he's more conscious about the things that he lived through in
yeah,
prison reform and stuff like that. It kind of releases a lot of the tension and things that I kind of think about, and now that the weather's getting a little bit better, I have something to look forward to. If the sun is out, I'll go on a nice walk and
yeah,
stuff like that. So I just try to be around like things that make me feel good, and I try to stay far from negativity, and it's hard sometimes because negativity sometimes maybe in your subconscious, and you know how that goes as an elusive person, and even being a creator, you might be creating something, and in the back of your mind, like it might not be this good, or it might not be good enough, or people might not like it. So yeah,
hmm.
I just try to
Typical insecurities.
Absolutely. So we're all human at the end of the day. We're not
Yeah,
perfect. So I just try to stay beside things and talk and replicate things that make me feel a certain type of way. And at the end of the day, I'm proud of myself because of the efforts that I show day in and day
hmm,
out. I'm not judging it on how much money I have or the car that I drive or the clothes that I wear. Is the efforts. You
yeah,
say you're gonna do something and you commit to it. So that makes me feel good. You know what I mean? So yeah. What about
nice.
yourself? What about yourself?
I don't know. Honestly, the last couple of days have kind of been a bit of a blur. Um, because I've just felt really called to like invest in what's going on right now on an emotional level,
Yeah.
and on an intellectual level, and um, it's I am feeling a bit overwhelmed. I think this has probably been like the most like calm I've been in a couple days, um, because I'm worrying about my friends in the States, and I'm worrying about the future of of my entire community, um, and just how this is going to affect the world. And even though I'm filled with hope, I'm also just kind of scared, a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of those things where it's like usually, when my friends come to mind, it's like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to give him a call. And, I feel great and positive right now. I love that guy. But, late, like when you reached out, the first thing that came to my mind was like, shit, I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
And that's just like a base level of anxiety that's just sucks right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. And you just never know, man. I think that's the same way I feel with any like just the things that happen in life. It's like you're very like paranoid because it's like anything can happen. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Hmm.
man, I hope he's good. Or when you're subconsciously thinking about somebody, it's like, oh man, I haven't seen this guy in 6 weeks. Like, how is he doing mentally?
Hmm.
How's his well being? How's his family doing? How is his loved ones doing? How is his significant other or partner doing? You know,
Hmm.
so it is deep. Yeah,
Well,
it is deep.
especially now when there's so many external triggers going on, like
Yeah,
with COVID and with this, escalating race war. And that's a crazy combination. That's a crazy combination of things to be going on.
yeah, yeah. Just even to think about it at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah, COVID already was fucking crazy enough. And
yeah,
all the adjustments that had to be made to keep everybody safe. And, that was a virus that was out of our control. But now we're dealing with, like, with the virus, it was, air particles, whereas this is human beings that have dangerous opinions
yeah.
and guns and motivation. So, yeah, I haven't even answered your question yet.
I
I
think
just
you,
I just realized that.
I think you more than answered and hit on many contributing factors and layers. And it just kind of brings us to the end of our segment. I just want to take this time to just say I'm very grateful for our friendship. I'm thankful that throughout my entrepreneurial transition and in life, you were always somebody that I could call and get advice from, and you were always supporting whether I had a crazy idea and remembering with the Vice documentary and stuff like that. But you really did inspire me to think creatively and go big, right? If you're gonna how you always have influenced me on how big my thoughts were, and
Mhm.
not to sell myself short. And I'm very thankful for that, and I appreciate you once again for sharing your insight on our platform, man. And you're always welcome here. And I hope everything that you're praying for comes to you in an abundance, and that you and all your loved ones are safe.
Hey man, the feeling's mutual. I have a very deep appreciation for all the engagement you're doing in the greater community, and just finding this really cool way to integrate sports and culture and love and unity all into one really beautiful package. And it's just been a really cool pleasure to grow alongside you. And
Thank
I'm
you,
looking
brother.
forward to more of it, man.
For sure, man. Just the tip of the iceberg, like they say, right? So
Yeah, man.
take care, brother. And I know I'll be seeing you pretty soon when this transitional COVID stuff is all done. But I'm actually reading the book Give and Take right now, as well as I
Nice
got
one.
a next book called the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. So I don't know if you read
Oh,
it.
nice one.
Oh, you
I
read it?
haven't read that one. No,
Okay.
no, yeah, that's a great book. Right now, I'm reading Me and My White Supremacy. So it's you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
we're
I'm
both
definitely gonna go
learning.
back on those type of books. But yeah,
Yeah,
I need to give
yeah,
my mind some like a breather away from all the stuff that I've been reading over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I'll definitely put that on the reading list, and we'll
it's
be
like
in
going to the
touch.
gym, man.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll get in touch shortly, and have a great rest of your day, and enjoy some sun.
Yeah, you too, man.
All
Thank you
right,
so
take care,
much.
buddy.
See ya.
All right, peace.